So welcome everybody to another installment of the Randonneurs USA Paris, Brest, Paris preparation seminar series. We've had a few in the past. They're probably at least a year old now, but now we are resuming, and we're going to have a couple of interviews that'll be going up on the channel. And we'll also have a presentation on April 2nd from Deb Banks and her crew doing a presentation on bag drop services that they are going to be offering. And then we'll also have on that Mark Thomas talking about what pre-registered riders will expect next, talking about due dates, what they have to complete by when, and so forth. So we'll have that on April 2nd. But today, I wanted to interview Cheryl Becker, who is from San Francisco, and she did PBP in 2019, and I want to see if I can cull from her important tidbits about what a first-time participant in PBP could expect, and a few other insights related to that. So Cheryl has been riding brevets since at least 2012, when she did her first Rusa brevets. Your Rusa number is 7649?
7647.
7647, okay. Just a couple off. So let's start out at the beginning for you and try and get some background. So like you started riding in 2012 when you joined Rusa. What were you doing before you began riding brevets, and how did you hear about brevets, and what drew you to that?
Well, I moved to San Francisco in 2017. And then sometime not too long thereafter, I actually started riding a bike. So I wasn't really into cycling until I moved out here.
Hold up just a minute. 2017?
Or sorry, 2007.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. I always get my decades mixed up because I'm getting old. So yeah, 2007. So
we'll circle back to that, and I'll put the lie to that in just a minute. Go ahead.
So yeah, I started riding not too long after that. And yeah, when I first started riding, I thought like the prospect of going over the Golden Gate Bridge was like a really big thing. And like I started riding and I found that I really enjoyed it, and I seemed to be fairly capable at it. So I kind of just started doing longer and longer things. So I did like a metric century, and then I did like a century, and then the next year I wanted to do like a double century. And so I started getting into the double centuries thing a bit, and then, you know, those crowds kind of overlap. So I think through some of the people I met there, like Kenny Emerson and Poodoo, I heard about the Randonneur thing, and I thought it sounded interesting. It kind of like, I like the idea of kind of pushing yourself to do longer distance things, but in like a more relaxed way where people weren't always trying to race or do anything, but really it was more just like pushing yourself and riding with other people, but not taking it super seriously, like racing style. Right. So that was what kind of like appealed to me in the beginning. And then I showed up for my first ones, and I just found that the people were really welcoming, and I really liked the vibe and just like the style of riding and the feeling of accomplishment I got when I finished the ride. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So the California double century circuit has been referred to as the gateway drug to randonneuring. And you know, quite a lot of us came via that avenue. I certainly did. And you've mentioned a number of people that I know followed that same path there. So you started riding brevets in 2012, and no doubt you had heard stories while you were on these double centuries from other people talking about randonneuring and PBP and so forth. When did you first hear about PBP? When did it come onto your radar? And what was the progression of thought about that concept? Like, did you think right away, that's something I wanted to go for? Or did that come across the years to that point?
I think it was more gradual. I do recall, you know, back like the 2015, I know it was on my radar at that time, but I didn't really necessarily think seriously about doing it at that time. Like I knew some people who were kind of getting into it, randoneering at the same time as I was, that went and did it, but I don't know, it seemed like a big prospect. So I kind of, sat on it for a while, and then, as 2019 came around, it was definitely something I felt like, when you get into the randoneering thing, and if you enjoy it, I think PBP is something that people always, at least want to do once, to see what it's like, because you hear so many great things about it.
Sure. What kind of rides do you think best set yourself up for being able to do PBP, or more to the point, being able to convince you that you could do PBP? I know that in 2014, you rode the California Central Coast 1200, and that in 2014, there was certainly a lot of people that were trying to get their longest ACP event done so that they could pre-register first. And so that, no doubt there was a lot of talk on there, but what kind of rides do you think helped you feel like this was something you could do or wanted to do even?
I don't really think if I base it all on 3CR, I probably wouldn't have felt like I could do PBP, because I don't think I rode for about 6 months after that. It was I got like I don't know, I had some Achilles issues, which is something that's never bothered me before or since, but I had like, after the end of that one, I was like, I had to take a bit of a rest. But thankfully, that's not something that I've experienced since then. And so I think having done that, it was definitely, it made me more confident. And then doing another one a few years later when I did
what was
Cooley.
the Cooley challenge?
Yeah, so that one, having done that, it kind of made me feel like, oh, maybe that first one was just, a jinx or something, or maybe something was wrong with my setup. I was still fairly, early on in my randoneering, so maybe something just wasn't set up right. So I felt like after finishing Cooley and not having the same issues, I felt like pretty confident that I could do that distance.
So that explanation resonates with me and my experience with 600Ks. So the first 600K that I did was, the first half was great, and the second half was a nightmare for me. I kept doing them because there were two things at work. One was that my friends were doing them. Certainly all my rando friends were doing them. And I wanted to succeed where I had failed before, or, I completed that first 600K, but not the way I wanted to. So that's what brought me back. Is that kind of what you're getting at with the Cooley?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it on the Cooley, or maybe when was it on the Cooley that you realized, I kind of like this, I can do this, this is a positive experience?
I think actually that whole ride, I just remember it being like an overall really good experience. I don't think I ever felt like physically, I didn't have any sort of like those issues that sometimes you'll get, that will start in a ride and be like, oh, this is going to be a problem. I didn't have any problems like that.
Cool.
And yeah, it was overall, I think it was just a good experience, and just like feeling, I felt like probably at that time I was in better shape than I had been before or since. So that also helped. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That too resonates with me. So it's 2018 and you've decided that you want to do PBP in 2019. How did you prepare for actually going over there and doing that?
Riding wise or just planning wise?
Both.
Either way, probably not much of either, to be honest.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm not much of a planner, so I like training and riding wise, I just kind of kept doing the same thing that I'd been doing that year, which was, I'd rode like a series, and I rode a longer ride. I did like 1,000K in 2019 to get ready for PBP. So I did like a longer distance ride.
Oh, what was the 1,000K you did in 2019?
The Gamblers.
Oh, right. Yeah. So that was in April, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, okay. So big,
Yeah.
long time in between completing that and PBP. What did you do in between? Was there something that you kept from doing because you wanted to avoid certain things, or, and then of course, what did you do during that time?
No, I think I actually ended up doing the other rides in the series. Like I think I did my 600K and 400K maybe in the summertime. I might have done them actually later.
Okay,
But I kept definitely kind of continuing to ride. I don't
okay.
think I necessarily like didn't do anything specifically because I knew PBP was coming up. I just kept on,
Well,
being pretty regular.
I have to say here that looking at you having done 1,000K in April and then going back to get your qualifiers signals to me a far more confident feeling that I would ever have going into those things. So I'm quite impressed with that. That's a pretty good way to step into that with confidence soaring at that point. So going all the way back to 2012 and even maybe before then, when you were hearing about randonneuring, you no doubt heard a lot of stories about PBP. And I'm wondering, did hearing any of those stories prepare you at all for going over there and doing PBP, or even deciding to sign up?
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of hear these stories and it makes it sound like it's just like, this legendary tradition that you want to be a part of. So I guess in that aspect, I think that definitely made me want to go and like experience it for myself.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, new parents, or actually prior to somebody becoming a new parent, they no doubt hear horror stories about raising kids. And there must be some analogous situation to PBP stories. Did you hear any of the awful stuff?
I heard like about a really rainy, horrible year. Yeah, for sure.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
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 And that one, you always worry that you're going to have that same experience, but you can never depend on the weather anywhere. So you just kind of keep your fingers crossed that it's not going to be that you're not going to have that bad luck, and that was just,
So you rode the 84-hour group in 2019, and I recall the first night after Tintiniac that we got some rain. I'm wondering what was going through your mind at that point.
It actually, like, I think that I was fairly fortunate that I got a little bit damp, but it wasn't anything like, it didn't stick around long, and I didn't get like too affected by it. So I wasn't too worried.
Okay, good to know. Okay. So you're now over in France, you're riding PBP. Was there anything in your experience that was a complete total surprise?
Maybe like just generally like the controls and like the size of them, and how like, coming from doing rides where you've got just, on a long ride like that, it's a small handful of people riding from place to place. It's, you have a stop and there's 20 people there or something. To have like hundreds and hundreds of people and like all of these volunteers, and just like how well kind of organized it was.
Okay, so first time into Ludiac, how long did it take you to find your bike when you came out from the cafeteria?
I have to say, finding your bike was probably one of the biggest challenges.
All right.
Yeah.
A similar experience to so many of us. So what advice would you wish that you had been given before you went to PBP? And then after that, what kind of advice would you think you want to impart to somebody else that they might not get from somewhere else?
Oh dear. I don't know about advice I didn't get maybe just to like take time to enjoy it as much as you can, like you kind of get going and you want to keep riding and do things at a certain time or be somewhere by a certain time and
Right.
have a plan. But I mean, the thing about it that I just found so enjoyable was just like the whole experience, like the people that were out cheering and just like the atmosphere. So just to like, yeah, soak in the atmosphere, I guess, as much as you can, I would say would be advice. And I don't know if anybody actually explicitly said it, but yeah.
Yeah. So in 2019, what was your favorite control? Do you remember them?
I probably couldn't tell you. I wouldn't be able to tell you one control from another, to be honest. I just rode. They all sounded French. They were all French names. I mean, I know what they are, but I couldn't tell you the different, like, one from the other. Maybe that first one where you're kind of like riding into the town and they're like all the bikes are lined up along the side of the road.
So that would be Villain-la-Juelle.
Yeah, I like that one.
And
where they had like the guy in the speaker calling everybody.
Right, yeah. So we would have gotten there in daytime both times. So yeah, outbound, it would have been a lot quieter, but inbound, everybody, all four groups, well, maybe not so many of the 80-hour people, but certainly many of the 90-hour people would be there as we're arriving with the 84-hour group. Yeah, that is my favorite place as well. I've enjoyed that so much each time I've gone there. Always a really great vibe there.
Yeah.
So was, in retrospect, the 84-hour group a good choice?
I honestly don't know without knowing like what the other groups would be like, like not only having ridden the 84-hour group. I mean, it worked for me. I finished. And
so how did you come to choose the 84-hour group?
Because you suggested it.
Okay, but it couldn't have been
you suggested it, and then other people that I knew that I ride with and that I ride pretty well with also were going to do that group. So I figured that would be a good, like, having some people that I knew that I ride well with in the same group as me would be, yeah.
So here's the big money question here. Are you going to do it again?
I may.
Yeah.
I thought about it this year, but I just don't think I can get my well, yeah, I haven't really been able to get myself into like the mode of riding enough, I don't think, to be, and I didn't do a whole lot last year, so I didn't get registered, and so I'm thinking maybe next time it'll be
2027.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely would not rule it out. Although, after, as soon as I finished, I was like, well, I will never do this again. But then not very long afterward, I was like, oh man, yeah, I'll definitely maybe do that again.
Yeah, circling back to that, early you had said when you were doing the coulee, you weren't experiencing some of the same physical ailments that you had on the Central Coast. And, there's this thing, no doubt have heard the phrase randonesia. Maybe that needs to settle in a little bit more before you decide to go over to France again.
Yeah.
All right. So one other thing to talk about here. So I don't know exactly how to express this, but the chart of people that do PBP, the typical person is 49-and-a-half-year-old male, not a racer. What I'm getting at is that they're older, and that demographic does not fit you. That's not your demographic here. So what kind of experiences could you talk about from not going to PBP and not being that kind of a representative?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things about PBP was maybe that's typical, but there were so many people there, like so many people doing it, right? Like even if you weren't the typical person, there were still tons of women. There were tons of like older people. There were younger people. There were people from everywhere in the whole world. So even if you're maybe, you know, if you're not the typical demographic, there's still like such a variety of people there that I think you don't really feel like out of place or underrepresented or anything like that, for sure.
Good to hear. So one of the things that sticks with me is riding into the small villages, especially in the daytime when there are some of the locals out and they're watching the procession of riders go by. And I've noticed that if I'm in a group that contains women in that little peloton there, that there's a little bit of an increase in the applause, and there's certainly a lot more animation from the women that are on the sidelines there watching, because they get a charge out of seeing that. What I'm hoping that you'll be able to say is that that kind of reception extends beyond that situation, that you didn't face any kind of impediments at the controls or from any officials or anything like that.
No, definitely not. And I would agree with that observation, is that even, you know, when I was riding, you would definitely, as a woman, feel like you're being cheered on a bit more maybe than you might have been if you were riding the same way. And yeah, people definitely were kind of, I think it seemed excited to see women out there, and were super supportive. So yeah, that was really cool.
That's good to hear. Yeah. So is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to be able to say?
No, I guess I would just say to anybody who's thinking about doing it that it's definitely like an experience that in my life I'm gonna be glad that I did. Like, you know, like when I look back on the things I did in my life, I'll definitely be thinking that that was one of the coolest things that I ever did. So if you're thinking about doing it, that you should definitely go and experience it for yourself, because it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Great. So I guess we'll end there. I want to thank you for sitting for this interview and providing all the answers that you did. And I also want to thank you for being a volunteer and supporting the people that are going this year. You know, you've no doubt benefited from that in the past, and it's great to see people like you stepping up and supporting the riders that are doing qualifiers this year. So thanks.
My pleasure.
Okay, so anybody watching this, if you have questions for Cheryl, just put those in the comment section on the YouTube page when I put this up there, and I can get those to Cheryl, and she can either answer them in the comments directly, or we'll find some way to get that information back to you. So thank you very much.
All right.
And
welcome,
see you
Rob.
at the next brevet.
All right. Bye.